was about the year 1900. The hardwood flooring that's still there today was laid out by prison laborers. Back in those days, you could actually use the prisoners for cheap labor. Of course, you can't anymore. The guy who lives in here today, many years ago, a small startup company approached him and said, "Can you please be our chief legal counsel? Don't have a lot of money to offer you." "Well, we can offer you our stock options." And he thought it through and said, "Yeah, I guess I could go along with that." The name of that small startup company. Has anyone heard of Dell Computers at all? Yeah. But yeah, him and his wife are very generous. They donated a lot of money to build a couple of nice parks here in town for the kids. I'm going to show you one of the parks he made later on in the tour. There's my good friend Billy over there lounging around. Everyone wave to Billy. Kind of a tour highlight there. We have had some famous people living in town. You may have heard of Academy Award-winning actress Jessica Lange and a partner at the time, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, playwright, actor himself, Sam Shepard, and Jessica Lange, who is originally from Cloquet, Minnesota. She wanted her kids to get a good Minnesota education like she had, so they packed up the family in New York and then moved into this home here to the left of us. This was their home.
That's nice.
Then when their last child graduated from Stillwater High School, they sold this home, moved back to New York. Evidently, Stillwater was too small for them. But speaking of Hollywood now, this is about 25 years ago. Hollywood was coming to town and filming some movies. You may have seen Grumpy Earl then, other films, and then one of my favorite films, Parts of Fargo, was filmed around here. Of course, that film does make fun of the way we Minnesotans talk. Of course, we don't really have an accent in Minnesota. Oh no. William Sawtrey was a clever, hard-working man who migrated to the United States and the potato famine in Ireland. Through hard work and determination, he went from working in the woods as a type of lumberjack into becoming a lumber baron himself. Home here to the left of us, this was his home. This was actually his third home here. His first two homes burnt to the ground because they loved to have fireplaces in every room. Now, I don't want to stereotype the Irish, but he did like to drink the whiskey. He'd pass out. No one was left over to tend to the fires in the fireplaces. They'd get out of control. So his first two homes burnt to the ground. When his third home was completed, he had coal gas installed. That's why it's with us today. Now, the home next to it is actually attached to that home to make one long home for William Sawtrey. Home here to the left of us. Now, this was not a living quarters, solely an entertainment center. In there, a bowling alley, a swimming pool, and a ballroom. He liked to throw big, lavish parties, hobnob with the big names in town. This home is Moorish in design, and it is designed after the Alhambra in Granada, Spain. A little bit ago, I mentioned how in the wintertime, lumberjacks lived in camps in the woods. In the spring, they moved to town, had to live somewhere, right? Let's look at this home here to the left of us. This is an example of a boarding home for the lumberjacks when they were in town. If you look at the top three windows, back then they were three small bedrooms. They'd cram as many lumberjacks as they could in there on bunk beds made out of cedar wood. Now, what I found out was cedar was chosen because bed bugs do not like cedar. It was a strategic way to keep the bed bugs at bay. Pretty ingenious. I did mention the hygienic practices of the lumberjacks, right? At any rate, when the lumberjacks were in town, they were no longer woodsmen like the winter months. All the harvested white pine logs needed to be ran through the sawmills, turned into lumber. So when they were in town, they were mill workers. But generally speaking, you see a longer, narrower home like that in town. Probably was a boarding home for the lumberjacks at one time. Most of those homes, though, are on the south side of the town, on what we call the South Hill. We're on the North Hill right now. I know my home here in Stillwater, which was built in 1880, that's exactly what it was at one time, a boarding home for the lumberjacks. Although I'm not boarding any lumberjacks at this time. But getting back to William